Hello and welcome to the podcast. My name is Rhiannon Berry and I am the host of a living library of resiliency, creative conversations. This is episode 5. Today I have a special co-host, Adele Campbell. She is a visual artist out of London, Ontario, who does micro butterfly art. Our guest today is Brent Thomas. Runner, writer, Renaissance man. As a member of the Canadian Authors Association, Niagara Branch, Brent Thomas composes fictional stories. He refuses to be pigeonholed as a one-genre writer. Often this author is not afraid, while treading through the darker themes of human experiences such as drug abuse, physical and sexual assault, suicide, and revenge in his writing. But he also brings a brilliant balance to his storytelling by highlighting the redeeming and delightful pieces and parts of existence. Brent is excited about his current project, a graphic novel called 6 Steps. He has collaborated with a visual artist to develop 6 Steps further. This particular story offers an incredible insight into the inner workings of a man who has experienced unimaginable tragedy and has found solace in revenge. As a child, Brent had a voracious reading habit and was fascinated about crafting his own stories that others could genuinely become lost in. One of his earliest stories, Me and My Monster, featured a whipping monster. This monster endured the torment of being abused and disfigured, while the beast was comforted by the child who slept in the bed which the monster lived under. Such is the case with most great writers. Writing what one knows can lead to the most dramatic and enduring stories, and this author's writing is no exception. Ever since he was a little boy, Brent had to navigate the slings and arrows of the great misfortune of being raised by physically and mentally abusive parents. Fearing for his life at the tender age of 13, he ran away from his adopted father's household. Brent was placed with his mother, whom when he was 15 he also ran away from. He ended up being a ward of the system and has been living on his own ever since. Like in his youth, basking in that new freedom, he has lived his life refusing to feel trapped in undesirable situations. Remarkably, he piloted the treacherous waters of adolescence without guidance and ironically graduated from high school and college in the same week. He went on to obtain a BTS, and despite his snarled past and other more recent life experiences that weave their way through his creative offerings, there is no shadowy presence in his life. Once a skittish child, Brent is now a confident and courageous writer. He lives his life as a Renaissance man, refusing to be shoved into anyone's box of ideals. I actually wrote down your pieces. So Adele, you had made something called Endless River.
Mm-hmm.
And then Brent, you did The Journey. And then Adele did Dreaming of Possibilities. And you did Nigel the Viking, which you said you just sort of polished up a little bit recently, which would be interesting to reread.
Yeah, I'm fixing it, yeah.
And then Adele finished off with I Am Them, They Are Me, Ancestor. So I don't know if you guys want to do a little exchange now and just talk about that pen pal back and forth that you had.
Sure. I mean, it was great. I enjoyed it very much. The only thing that was a bit of a struggle for me was the time frame. Like for me to write a coherent story in 24 hours is really hard. And if you actually look at those two stories, I'm not really proud of those stories. They both were very rushed. And that's why I'm going back and I'm fixing Nigel. And reordering them. So Nigel is now the first chapter and The Journey is the second chapter going on.
Well, that's funny. I did the same thing because I, as an artist, was not happy with how Nigel turned out. So
yeah.
I had added, there's definitely some additions to that and still some work that needs to be done. So I feel the same.
On your art or on my writing?
On my art.
Oh, my writing too. No, I like you're a great artist, and just to do that in that little time is incredible. And
I think it it would be very interesting to, once you guys are happy with the pieces, to redo it as like a special.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, I just took it to the Canadian Authors Association meeting for review and critique. And they liked the story, but of course they were, reviewing and critiquing. So they were putting in fixes here and there, and now I'm fixing it. And it's going to actually be a decent story, I think, when it's finished.
It was a really great story to read. It
Right.
had my imagination going. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. Your painting did the same for me. And in that first painting, I sat and I looked at it and looked at it and looked at it and just kept thinking, what am I going to do with this? Like, what is this going to spark in me? And then it dawned on me. My partner said to me, "Oh, that's a boat at the bottom." And I said, "Oh, it is a boat." And then boom, I had the idea for the journey of the Vikings. And then when you did the second one, it was just so clear where I had to go with it. But I reordered them. So Nigel is in the first chapter. The first chapter ends with him being put in the backyard with his dad with a flashlight and a blanket and given the book and the Viking hat. And then the second chapter is the journey, the story that he's reading. Yeah, he reads this story, and then his story goes on from there, and how he's affected by the story and
Cool.
his heritage and stuff. So yeah, I got a plan for it. And,
amazing.
hopefully it goes well.
That's what I love, when stories like this come out of the Creative Conversations Pen Pals project.
Yeah.
I've sold a few little paintings from it. I've had one, me and Adele's first meeting was through, we were in round 2, I think, together.
That's right. Yeah.
And
Nice.
she sent me something she had painted on tin foil.
Yeah.
And it was around Christmas time, and I painted some mushrooms, some blue mushrooms, some magic mushrooms. But the thing was, I was thinking about Christmas and how far off we are with commercialism. And it really got me thinking in a way that I would have never thought before.
Yeah.
And then also, that was such a big idea in my head that I couldn't complete it in time. So I completed it later.
Right.
Now that piece is now going to be the backdrop for an Alice in Wonderland themed play.
Amazing.
In Cambridge.
Wow.
So I'm enlarging it. It's hanging in the hub in Niagara Falls on Queen Street. And I just submitted it to a Hydrobox project. So you never know what's going to come out of these little sparks. So they don't have to be completed projects, because you're only getting 24 to 48 hours
24.
to complete something. And for a
Short
write,er
time.
kudos to you as a writer. Like I couldn't even believe what I was reading, that was done in 48 hours, So for you to have done that, I can only imagine what the rewrite's going to be like.
It's going to be a lot better.
Yeah, I'm excited to read it. That will be amazing.
Adele was really the big part of that, because she created the way that we worked it out. I think this is the same as everybody else, but she painted first and then I wrote second. Yeah. Instead of the other way around, which would be actually a cool experiment. I write a story and then you interpret it in painting. That would be really cool. I've never seen that done, but that would be kind of cool. But Adele really led the way with her paintings. Like, she led me on this, the first one with the river and the boat. And I was like, okay, we can do a Viking thing with this. And then I thought, okay, what's she going to do next? Like some trees or a landscape scene. But she actually kept on with the theme of the Viking. And then that's why when we wrote Nigel, and then her third painting, I really wanted to do, because she took such a detailed approach to the shield of the Viking and putting those Norse symbols on it. I mean, it was incredible. And I really wished I had more time to write a story for that. But I still have it, so you never know what will happen.
Yeah, exactly. It could be chapter 3.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Expand on it.
And what an awesome way to potentially create almost like an illustrated story.
Yes. Yeah, I'm doing I have a project on the go right now where I'm doing a graphic novel.
Wow.
So I have an artist, and she's in Quebec, and she's a comic artist, and so she's doing the drawings for me, and I've got the story laid out. It's actually 6 steps. is going to be my graphic
Oh
novel.
my gosh. Okay. Can I just say 6 Steps had me crying, like, and texting Adele, like, don't read this one. Like,
Yeah.
it was, it, okay. So just to clarify, I guess, you sent me 3 new or older stories that I hadn't
Older
read yet.
stories. Yeah.
And they really did dive into like a number of different themes. Like Josie dealt with heroin, living on the street, falling in love, being youth, being abused mentally and physically, and then also alcoholism. Like there was just so much going on, like overdose. And
Yeah.
then napping was memories, before you fall asleep, and then perhaps like of childhood, and then like also like that mundane piece of life
Yeah.
with your partner. Something you might even be a little like disheartened with them, over the years with the children,
Yeah.
and it gets kind of that feeling really came through. And then
Yeah, it
6
did.
Steps hit me like a freaking
Congrats.
wrecking ball. Child molestation or rape, suicide, revenge, grief, and then like more alcoholism and ghosts. And like like your writing is just so packed full.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I'm not kidding, this is the second story I've read of yours that's made me cry. The first one was
Well,
the one about the fallen angel. Like I was,
yeah.
yeah, but
I
this
got great
one,
feedback from that story. Yeah.
yeah.
And
So six
Steps is,
steps.
yeah, 6 Steps is pretty hardcore. That's why I'm going to put it into a graphic novel. And I think that there is some redeeming, even though it's scary, it touches on a lot of nerves for many people. I think it has redeeming value in kind of the themes, in the themes of revenge and not really being fulfilled by it, but in a sense being fulfilled by revenge.
It's like
But then
it's
go
like a
ahead.
thought. It's like a thought experiment. If that's ever
Yeah,
happened to you or somebody you love, like how
right.
you feel you want to get the revenge, but in this society and like you're not like, far and few
Yeah,
between somebody's going to walk into the courthouse and murder the person who's done this to their family member.
yeah,
But it's a great thought experiment, and as dark as it is, like, it was moving in that way too. Like I didn't feel hatred for the guy.
yeah.
Um,
It's like sympathy for the devil kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you liked it. I mean, I understand it. It's when I read that in public, it was at one of the it was painting poetry and prose, actually, my
Wow.
first one.
No wonder
And
everybody was nervous about you writing with my dark angel painting. I wonder everybody was like, what's going to come out of this?
yeah. Well, I think they like what came out of it. I got a lot of great feedback on it. But that was my 6 Steps was my first story with the CAA group in that poetry, prose, and art installation that they have. And 8 people walked out of the room.
Like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
Rhiannon gave me a heads up because
Yeah.
a lot of the themes that run in that story are themes that have run through my life, and I actually avoided the story.
No, that's okay.
And
You
I'm
should have.
sorry because I am going to read it now. I said I'm strong enough to do it, but then I subconsciously avoided reading it because
I just told her, I said, look, Adele, like, I don't know if you've read them yet, but there are some triggers in the last one. Well, there's triggers in all of them, but there's triggers in the last one.
Yeah.
And she said, oh, you know what, whatever shows up, it just means it's something that I still have to deal with.
Yeah.
Like I need to, like, so I'm strong, I'm going to do this. And then today she was like, something subconscious made me not read it quite yet.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No, and it's I as a writer, I take risks.
Yeah.
Even the risk of, triggering. If it happens, I mean, I'm not trying to do that, but if it does happen, then I have to be responsible for it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I try and balance it through the story. And I had one person who read it and they said, at first I thought the guy was just crazy, but then the mirror scene in his car convinced her that, oh no, there's something else happening. There's all kinds of stuff happening.
There's a different vibe in the air, something
definitely.
spiritual happening in that story.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. I mean, it's a fantasy I'm sure a lot of fathers have had.
Yeah, well, those who have been unfortunate to have that kind of thing happen in their family, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
great job on that one.
Well,
And
thank you. I appreciate it.
happy to hear that you might be doing more with it.
Yeah, well, we're going to have it into a graphic novel. And then another project I'm doing is a book of short stories. So I'm going to do 10 or 11 short stories and then just put it out for publication. But I'm going to put it in brick and mortar. I'm not going to try and self-publish it unless I get rejected by everybody. I don't think I will, but you never know. I do know I just got introduced somewhat to an editor that somebody else is working with. So that'll be a big leg up when I'm ready to submit it, just get it professionally edited and then, see if it's any good.
Yeah, everybody needs a good editor. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. What about the Josie story, Adele? What did you think of that one? The first one.
I loved the Josie story. It was a really, it kind of smacks you in the face in the beginning. You're like, wow, I can't believe this person is going through this. And then just leading up to the very end of the story was so interesting how each of the different aspects of the story took place and how it went down really quickly.
Yeah.
And
sorry.
right into, running away and then falling in love and then also becoming an addict to get over that love.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, that's a published story. So that one has done well.
Where can people find that?
It's published through the Canadian Authors Association. They have a collaboration they do every year called 15 Stories High.
Okay.
And I think it was in their year before last.
Okay. I can find it.
Can I ask how you got introduced to the Canadian Authors Association? Like, how did you become a part of that association?
I was an author and I just felt like I needed help. I needed a kickstart. And so I searched for help for authors online, and it came up the Canadian Authors Association. And at first I thought it was a professional organization, like you had to be this or that to get in. And I found out it's just for any writer. And their motto is writers helping writers. And so I wanted to get in there and get my stories in and have other people look at them and tell me what they thought. Because I think as a writer, you always think your stuff is garbage.
Yeah.
And it
Same
takes
as an
somebody,
artist.
it takes somebody else looking at it, like a fresh pair of eyes or just a different pair of eyes, to realize that, you have something here or you don't. And so that's what I really liked about that concept of the Canadian Authors Association.
Yeah, they're a non-profit.
Non-profit, yeah.
And the Niagara branch covers St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, and Port Colborne, or?
People from Hamilton that drive there to drive to our meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the group is doing really well. And we got some publications out. Some people have, won some awards and things. So it's really cool organization. There's a membership fee, but that just basically covers the time that we have to rent space to meet at. But it's nominal. I don't even think it's $100. It might be $100. I don't remember. I just pay it every year. But no, they're great. They've been a good help.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the painting, poetry, and prose. I saw it published a few years, and then I was just like, as an artist, I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm good enough, right? And then I submitted 5 this year, and you chose the one that I thought nobody was going to want, which was this dark fallen angel painting.
Love it.
And
love it.
And then he bought it too. He purchased
Yeah.
it because he was, he loved the inspiration so much. So that was a really good experience for me, and I'll be joining again, in future years for sure.
I love that painting. Still prominent in my house, and I was even thinking about getting a tattoo of it.
Wow!
I want to talk to you about that first.
I'd be honored. Yeah.
If I could just get a copy of your written initials, then I'd like to have that on there too.
Wow. For sure, that would be awesome. I love that idea. I'm big into tattoos, so first off, I love that. But like to talk about that painting a little bit too, like I said, I had kind of, I let a few tears go in the meeting, and it was a virtual meeting this year because of COVID.
Yeah.
The authors would read the story and the painting would be up on the screen. And I literally turned my camera off because I didn't want everybody to see me crying. Because you had turned, the story is awesome in itself and it's moving in itself, but you had turned something that was very difficult for me, in like a not so nice story into like this really redeeming story of hope.
Yeah.
So like the painting itself, I painted during the week after my father passed away.
Oh.
And there was some debate amongst family members whether it was a suicide or not. So I was trying to figure all of that out. And
Oh, that's tough.
he wasn't like the best man either.
Yeah.
So I had already said goodbye to him in my teen years. So now I was like trying to figure out, how do you say goodbye to somebody twice?
Yeah.
And then, you know, I sat down and I painted this. And I had a few sisters at the time who were fighting over what to do with the ashes. So
Okay.
one wanted like a little piece of the ashes in her own little urn, and another one wanted, you know, all of them together. And then his mom was like, well, he'll go to purgatory if these ashes aren't all together. And so I just started picturing this like fallen angel, because he didn't really deserve much better than a fallen angel in my mind, carrying this urn around in purgatory. So
Huh.
that's what I painted. But your story was about finding this, like, you know, these fallen angels finding this like bright, like spark that wasn't supposed to be in hell, and sacrificing itself to bring it back to heaven.
Right.
So it turned something that was so dark in my life
Yeah.
into just something so beautiful. So thank you for that. And I just
Oh, you're
wanted to
welcome.
share that with you, because it did mean a lot to me. And the fact that it's, you know, continuing with the idea of doing a book and the idea of doing a tattoo, it means a lot to me.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Because I saw that painting, and as soon as I saw it in the list, I picked it right away. And when I told them, you know, I'm picking this one, I got a bunch of messages that said, of course you are. You know, no, we knew you were going to pick that one, but I didn't think they knew what I was going to do with it. And so being able to impact your life, you know, like indirectly, is a wonderful, wonderful compliment. And I'm glad you enjoyed it. And thank you so much for painting it. I love that picture. I love it. Show everybody who comes in the house, look at this amazing art.
That feels so great. Yeah, that's so nice to hear. And I'm so happy we got matched together. We could do this collaboration.
That's a
Yeah,
beautiful partnership, writers and painters.
it is, isn't it? I really like it. I really do. I think, and you know, we've talked a little bit offside with Rhiannon and I about, you know, we could make that into something. We could actually do a book of painting and stories that go together from Canadian authors and artists, and submit that as a group for publishing.
Something we need to find time to work on, right? Just I you know, as a student, I'm so limited in time. It's all these like great ideas. I feel like if we continue to be friends, you know, well into our, I don't know how old you are, but I don't know, 40s and 50s, maybe we'll make it one day, right?
I'm already there.
You're there?
I'm in my 40s.
I'm approaching my 40s, so
they're not as bad as you think.
Yeah, they're supposed to be the best times of your life, right, Adele? 40s,
Apparently.
isn't that what they say?
Yeah, that's what they say.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm muddling through.
So the title that you picked for your book, when we asked you if your life was a story, what would the story be? You chose Runaway Writer Renaissance Man.
Yeah.
Do you want to expand on that, why you chose that as your title?
Well, let me say this. Josie and the Dragon is it's a dramatic nonfiction. So when I started out young, I was a runner. And that's not to say everything in Josie is true, because it's not, but there's always truth in in the things I write somewhere, and that's, I think, is pretty normal. But so I was a runner when I was younger, and a writer now. Was it runner, writer, Renaissance man?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a writer now. I take the experiences that I have had that are even negative in my life, and I try to either express them so people understand what it's like to go through something like that, or I just try to bring in a generalized awareness of, you see people on the streets, you see them on the streets. Most people don't consider that they have had a whole life before that point. They just look at where they're at right now and they say, well, this guy's a bum or whatever. And they don't really think about what happened in his life or her life to bring them to that point. And I like to write about that. And I like to use my experiences to running and writing. And then Renaissance Man is really, I've had so many careers and I just do whatever I want, really. I mean, I know that sounds weird, but I don't feel locked down into anything. And so, that kind of idea of the freedom of a Renaissance man is kind of, if I want to go somewhere, I go somewhere. If I want to experience something, I go and find a way to experience something. I could go on ride-alongs with cops for the fun of it, and just all kinds of things like that. I just do whatever I want, and it translates also into the writing as well, because I don't write one genre. I basically write whatever I want. So I can do a Josie and the Dragon, I can do a 6 Steps, or I can do Napping, which is like, Napping doesn't really fit in there anywhere between those 2 stories, at least. But
or Nigel and the Viking.
Or Nigel and the Viking, right?
Yeah.
So I write whatever I want to write. I write whatever I feel like. I'm not a single genre writer, and I don't feel like I'm in chains. I can live my life the way that I want and do the things that I want to do. And so that was kind of why I came up with that title. There were a whole bunch of other titles that I could have chosen, but that seemed to sum it up for me.
Yeah, and when I look at the 2 stories that I read that I'm aware of, running away kind of shows up a little bit in a way in both of them.
Yeah.
Is that a theme in your life in general, or even in the words that you do write?
There is, it's not a theme in every story or anything like that, but it is a theme. And it is based somewhat on, like I said, as a runner, as a kid. I've lived on my own since I was 15.
Mm-hmm.
I have my own apartment, and I've just lived on my own since that time. Of course, other people came and lived with me for times and whatnot, but well, I've lived on my own, and just that sense of freedom after being pushed into bad situations that you had no control over and that you couldn't change and you couldn't say anything about. Just going from that to the freedom of being able to be in my own place without having to hide around the corner or whatever, cringe in fear, things like that. Then I think once I had that taste of freedom, I certainly wanted to stick with that. And the running does take a little bit of a place, and I think I do that because it's pretty common for kids to take off. Hopefully sometimes they come back, but sometimes they don't. And people always wonder why did he run away? What was so bad? But they don't ask you when you're in the midst of it.
That's true.
I was a flinchy kid. You came within a foot of me, I was flinching at school, at home, everywhere. And nobody seemed to be like, to ask the question, why is he so flinchy? But then after I ran away, they were like, why did he run away? And it becomes frustrating to you because you kind of get labeled in a certain sense as a runaway, but they don't understand, what's going on in your life, in your household, in your own mind while you're in abusive situations. And they don't understand that can propel you. I mean, I literally left. First time I ran away, I was in grade 7, and I ran away because I thought my father was going to literally kill me. And that was the first time I ran away. And I had no choice. It was that in my head, it was that I had absolutely no choice except it was run away or die. And so I picked run away.
So sorry to hear that you had to go through that. Like, that's
Well,
intense.
Yeah, that is very intense for a young child. Wow.
Yeah.
yeah, thank you. I mean, it was, yeah, I always say I grew up in hell, except just next door to the devil, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it is amazing how you could be in an abusive situation, go to school, or like be a poor kid, right? Go to school, people know you're being neglected, and they don't do anything about it until, much later than something should have been done,
Yeah.
So I think it's getting better now. Um, I know my son, he's 15, but like I've been very active in his schooling, and maybe I've
Yeah.
lucked out with some great schools, but like just the way that they prep them in the first week, to make them be friends and get them in groups and find people who have the same interests. And the teachers are
Yeah.
really, it's so much different from when I was a kid and I went to school. And I remember we did have some experiences with like some childhood like homelessness at certain points where we were really hiding a lot
Yeah.
and nobody picked up on it. And I think to myself, I didn't have a winter jacket until like mid October, and I was in Thunder Bay and nobody questioned it.
That's weird.
Yeah, so like I kind of get what you're saying, because it's just like I think back, like as a mother, I look at my kid and I'm like, I like nobody notices these things, like,
Yeah.
So yeah, I get it. I get it. I don't think I went through nearly as much physical abuse as you did, but definitely
I hope
it
not.
no, I don't think so. Not from if there's some truth in these stories, then definitely not. But I get it though. Like you could be a child in this world, and nobody, you're misunderstood as a teenager because all these things start spilling out as a teenager, right?
Absolutely.
So what were you like as a teenager?
Horrible. That was horrible. I lived on my own. I got in trouble with the police a few times. Um, there was all kinds of things going on. I just want to touch on something you said really quickly though. The first story I ever wrote that I thought that I was like, okay, I'm doing this for real. I'm a writer, I'm writing, and I wrote this story. The story is called Me and My Monster. And it's about a little boy who's in an abusive home. I mean, if you think Six Sex was triggering, you would not want to read this story. But this story was about this kid who is abused physically, and he has to mentally creates a monster that lives under his bed and sometimes sleeps with him. And the monster is there to take the beatings. So the kid can phase out, sort of in his mind, he can phase out, and then it's the monster getting hit. It's not him getting hit.
Yeah.
And then he comforts the monster afterwards. And the monster is like horribly like beat up and, kind of disfigured and stuff because he takes all these beatings. Right.
Right.
And that was one, I mean, that was one that I probably released a lot of stuff writing, but also it was angry writing at that time. It was very angry writing.
It's like re-traumatizing as well. And then just something you said in there, and I'm sure Adele probably picked up on this as well, is that's the beginning of how dissociative identity disorder begins.
Yeah, it
absolutely.
is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Same as having imaginary friends.
Absolutely. You gotta click out of the situation because it's just too much for a young
You can't
brain.
handle it. Yeah.
Yeah, you just can't. So something comes up.
And so is storytelling in a way for you how it began and how it continues? Is it a way where you said there's pieces of truth in your stories, even though most of them are fiction? Is it a way for you to continue to heal yourself and write some of your truth into the story so that it's healing you a little bit along the way?
I would say if that happens, it's unintentional, but it's not like I'm trying to heal through the writing. It's just sometimes I'm thinking of a particular scenario, whether it's me or somebody else I know, or something I was involved in, and I try to make sense of it somehow. But I don't do that in all my stories. Like I have stories that are just pure fiction that have nothing to do with any of this.
Yeah, those are the ones that you contributed to the art exchange.
Yeah.
Like those ones too. Yeah. So you do have some lighter stories. But I
Yeah.
think people wait to hear from you with these darker stories. I do.
I know they do. And that's my
Well,
passion. I love that.
maybe it's a means of healing them, because you said in the beginning of our conversation that 6 steps can, takes you through some really serious situations. But if you're willing to read the story and kind of go through it, maybe like for me, I was like, I'm going to read it and I'm going to try to heal through that, because whatever shows up for me is obviously something that I haven't yet dealt with. So maybe in a
Yeah.
way you're also healing others
Well,
unknowingly.
yeah. Well, I would say even unintentionally,
Mm-hmm.
It's like a writer, you don't set out to offend people. You don't set up to turn people away from you. You tell your stories, and they can be cathartic. They can have healing principles. And I'll tell you, please do read the story. Let me know what you think. And
I
remember
will.
this: the story cannot hurt you. You're not in it. The story cannot hurt you.
It's true.
That's what I've had to tell to other people. It's a story. It won't hurt you. It won't bring you. It won't abuse you again or hurt you again, or something like that. So when you read it, just remember the story can't hurt.
Yeah. It can certainly trigger some things.
Sure.
I can attest to that.
Yeah. No, it certainly can do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
that wasn't intentional either. I didn't try to mess with people.
the piece that really got me in that story, going back to that story again, was not the suicide. It was the piece after, where the relationship between the parents just sort of, it just was nothing. And there was no care that it was nothing. There was nothing left in this man's heart.
Yeah.
But then he found it again later in the story. He found something to sort of live for. But that piece, really, that's when the tears started coming. It was just like, this is so sad. What could happen to people, because of something else that some other, scumbag, can inflict upon you. And it really made me, like, I literally got up and checked my windows and locked my doors. I was like, why am I being so loose? There are these people out in the world. That's what it did. It really got to me. I was just like, oh my God. But, I don't live my life, locked in a box. But
no.
that night, I really kind of started thinking, how am I living my life in such a way that I'm not keeping myself safe?
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good. I mean, I never know what a reader's going to absorb. I've had people that have read my stories before, and they come up with things that I never even thought of. Like some little sentence somewhere in the middle will really strike them, and I don't even remember it. I remember, the gist of it, but they'll say, when you wrote this part, it just got to me. And that's always a surprise and a joy for me when people are moved by the writing, whichever way. Like I said, I don't set out to screw with people. Well, sometimes I do, but in different ways, not triggering ways, just to try to twist their minds up. And I'm glad to hear it really affected you. I was really surprised after we did the painting in prose together, how many people contacted me after about that story.
A lot of people contacted me about the painting as well.
Suckers, I got it.
I sold one print. And then I thought to myself, I'm not selling anymore, because, it's an important piece and I don't want it all over the place.
Right. Very unique. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So you have the original and there's one print out there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, good for that.
Yeah.
So going back to your story, the cover of your book, Renaissance Man. Tell me more about why you relate to that.
It's
is it the freedom and
the freedom?
The freedom.
Yeah. The freedom. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, I'll let you finish your question. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. So freedom keeps coming up. And is that maybe one of the reasons why you like freedom to write whatever you want as well? Because then you're not put in any kind of writing box where you have to write a certain kind of story.
Yeah, I don't like to be pigeonholed. because it's almost like you know, if you say, well, I'm kind of the guy that does mostly horror in the CAA, and people always expect that, you know, and so that's why I wrote like Josie and the Dragon. I had to write something completely different just to show myself that I had the freedom of range to write whatever I want to write. You know, I wrote a little book for my kids when we used to go to the cottage together, and we go every year we went to the cottage. I'd write a new chapter for them, and only write it at the cottage, never at home. And then every year at the last night of the cottage, I would start from the beginning and read the full story to them, including the chapter they'd never heard before. And
wow.
you know, they loved it. It was a little ghost story. It wasn't scary. I mean, my kids were, I don't even know, 8, 9 years old at that time, so it wasn't like I needed them terrified for the night, because then I'd be up all night. But it was just a fun little story about a campground, and I wrote them into the story, which they really loved.
Of course.
Yeah. So
That's amazing.
yeah, the Renaissance is just freedom. It's the freedom to do, and the mental freedom to not get bogged down with everything that's happening in this moment, so much so that this moment stretches on too long. It turns into a day or a week or 2 weeks. You get depressed. Like, I just try to resist that as much as I can by figuring out something new to do, just to try anything.
I like that, not getting bogged down by the moment. That's really important.
Yeah,
I do a lot of that too with my painting. I just like go from one extreme to the other and everything in between. And then when I think I figured out, like, you know, a theme, I'm just like, it's blown out of the water again because I see something else that I really want to try. Yeah. But yeah, I try everything. I don't know what's, you know, I can't. I'm too excited. I want to try something. I want to try this genre, or I want to try this medium, or I want to try, you know, I see something really pretty that I want to like expand on.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the things with me is my mind seems to go quick, and I can easily get bored with things. So, you know, if I'm bored and sick of my job, and, you know, I hate it, I don't think, well, I have to have this job, I'm stuck here. I'm just like, I quit, you know, things like that. Or if I just get into a funk, then I just try to find any way to get myself out of it, because nobody else is going to do it for me. I mean, the friends will come and they'll try because they're good friends, but ultimately I'm the one that has to get out of my funk. So I just do something different, something I haven't done in a while, or something I've never done before, you know, things like that. But then again, I don't obsess about each of those things, right? It's like it's like a person who takes a karate class and then maybe becomes the local or the neighborhood karate guy, and he's got a heavy bag in his backyard, and he's always walking around in his karate pajamas, you know, and things like that. He gets all into it. And then that's his thing.
Like a hyper focus. Yeah.
Yeah, but that becomes his
identity. Yeah.
Identity. Yeah, and I don't do that. That's what I struggle. I struggle to not be pinned down, forced into things that I don't want to be forced into, you know, like staying at a job I hate, you know, things like that. And I just I don't know if it's the courage or the stupidity to just keep doing what
I think it's an artist spirit.
Yeah, probably.
Creative spirit.
For sure, yeah. It is.
It seems scary to go against society's grain and quit a job, but I literally, like, both me and Adele have walked away from jobs. I walked away from, you know, a job that I'm a single parent, and I walked away from a job that was pretty good paying in this area, like higher than any other organizations that for the same. But I walked away and I decided, you know what, that's not what I want to do with the rest of my life. And It's not worth the stress, and it's not worth. And I was seeing how everybody else was playing. It was like playing roles, doing what society tells you to do. There was there were a lot of room for me to be creative, but at certain costs as well.
Yes.
So
course, yeah.
I was a health and safety manager.
Yeah.
So
there we go.
I was about policies and procedures. I was like, enough is enough. There's too many rules.
Oh, you could just write them forever, those things.
Couldn't you?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was a executive director, and I had to write all the policies and procedures.
Yeah.
And I had to fix a bunch of stuff, and it was rewarding work, but you know, it just got to the point where, you know, I had done so much, they really didn't even need me anymore, and I just didn't really want to just sit there for the rest of my life. And in terms of that box, then, I didn't fit in the box, and I would have to really sacrifice a lot of who I am to fit in that box.
Yeah.
I'd have to,
Likewise.
you know what I mean? And I was not willing to do that. I wasn't willing to compromise my life, my dreams, my values, so that I could fit in this box and make everybody looking at the box very happy.
Yeah,
just
and I
got to the
think
point where-
that's sort of where consultants have figured it out, right?
yes, yeah,
You're an expert at something, but you get to move around and fix things, and yeah.
Fixing things has been a lot of my career. Not mechanical things. I couldn't fix a bicycle, but mechanically, but fixing problems, things like that has been a big part of my career. One of my careers, and a few of them. I went to college. I'll tell you a little story. You can cut it out if you want or whatever. But when I was a young man, I dropped out of high school. You asked me how I was as a teenager. I said, pretty awful. I dropped out of high school. Well, I was kicked out and then did not reapply. Let's put it like that. So if that's dropped out, then I guess that's what I did. And then later in my life, I was about 20, 21 or so. I was working a good job. The company I worked with were really great. They sent me to community college on their dime and on their time. And at the same time, I had been working on my high school diploma because I really just wanted to get that done with. And so it ended up that I graduated from college on a Tuesday and high school on the Thursday of the same week.
Oh, wow.
I did it backwards, but I got them done.
That's great. Good for you. A lot of people don't go back.
No, I know they don't. Then I went on and I got a bachelor's and a master's, and that was all well and good because that was stuff I wanted to do. So I really love the college university experience better than the high school experience. I think everybody in the world does, right? Yeah. So that was a good impact on me. Doing academic studies was really good for my writing, my grammar and those kinds of things, and all those experiences gave me somewhat of a different perspective on things. And I use that in my writing.
What's your BA in?
Theology.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's a BTS, yeah. It's a Bachelor of Theological Studies. Yeah, it's always been my dream to be a writer since I was a child. Wow. I started reading at a very early age. My mom was and is an avid reader. She just reads. I think there's barely been a day that I have ever seen my mother without a book in her hand or in her purse. Always has it. And when I was a kid, I wanted to know what the big deal was, so I started reading. And and my mom, she liked all kinds of stuff. Like she had a closet full of romance novels. Thankfully, I never read those, or else I'd be even worse off than I am today. But she loved Stephen King, and she loved those things. And I read every book in my school library. It wasn't a huge library; it was a grade school library, 4 walls with books, kind of thing. I read all those books that were in there. I started thinking that wouldn't it be great to write a book? First book, full novel I read was The Son of Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. And during that, I experienced the joy of reading. I was seeing myself in the story, and I was getting emotionally involved with these characters, and they were like a part of my life, and the story was a part of my life. And after I was done it, I was just stunned. I said, if I could do this, this would be the only thing I ever wanted to do. And the only thing I ever really wanted to do was be a writer. But it didn't work out like that situationally until I was a little bit older. But I remember that, the idea that I could, through stories, touch people's lives. And whether it's sad or happy or things like that. I just really wanted to be able to do that, to take a story and share it with people, and they remember it. Years later, they remember that character or something like that. Or they make an odd Trivial Pursuit answer seem easy because they're readers. And so I went from being a massive reader to writer at a very young age. I read that book in the first grade, that Son of Tarzan, and then I started just reading basically my mom's books after I finished out the library, and like her horror stories. And I did a speech in the third grade on Stephen King's book Danse Macabre,
Wow.
and I got second place, which was
What is
cool.
that, like 8 years old?
Let me think. I'm a November baby, so I can't remember if I was ahead or behind, but yeah, 5, 7, 8, yeah, 8 or 9, yeah. I mean, it was just for the school. It wasn't like national.
What was
TV.
your speech on in grade 3, Adele? Do you remember?
It was basically a book review of. Oh, you're talking to her. I thought you were talking to me.
Yeah. I was just gonna see if she remembered hers.
Like,
I
no,
think
I
mine
did
was like
not.
on UFOs or something, maybe.
Cool.
I think mine was on the Blue Jays, not a Blue Jay. Now that I think of it, yeah, a Blue Jay.
Nice. Nice.
Those public speaking little things that they made you do in school.
Yes.
Jeez, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they know that that's not right to throw somebody with social anxiety in front of a classroom and say, okay, but everybody has to do the speech and we're calling you by
Yeah.
last name so that you can sit there and like
Yeah.
get all anxious. And
Especially
I think that was the worst part of school for me. Jesus.
Especially rough for even that in science projects, like science fair projects. I think that's really extra difficult for kids who don't have a good family.
Yeah. Hello, or
Of
resources.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right? I mean, if I have to write a speech and I'm afraid to do it and I don't want to do it, it's easier to overcome that if I'm well prepared. And
Nobody's sitting at the table with you practicing your spelling words.
No.
that's
right.
exactly. Nobody's even telling you how to write a speech. They just say, go write a speech. It's got to have an opening, a body, and a conclusion.
Yep. Yep. And no internet back then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're going way, way back to the 70s. Where we're all,
They had
old
alphabetized dictionaries.
Yeah, encyclopedias.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And just really at home, no help. And so that's why the kid in the science fair, I was always a kid in the science fair with a project that looked like a piece of garbage and didn't even work.
It was like a banana with like something attached to it.
A fork.
I took 5 pieces of plastic, glued them together to make a little shack, and I put a plant in it. And then it was a presentation on greenhouse effect.
Well,
Hey, that's pretty creative.
It made no sense at all. And the teacher actually said, I thought you could do a lot better than that.
Oh, see, nowadays they know more, but yeah.
Well, he was right though, but my parents didn't help me. They didn't buy anything for me.
Well, when you're stressed out at home, you're going home to an environment like that. I don't know if you were living with your dad or your mom at the time, but both seem to be harsh environments. When you're going home to something like that, you're not resting at night. You're on edge, right? So you're not getting, the motivation or the sleep or everything that you need. And sometimes even like the nutrition to be able to pull off a science exhibit.
Absolutely. I remember it's interesting that you bring up sleep, because sleep is a part of is part of my problems from childhood. I actually have had a traumatic experience when I was 6 months old. I think my uncle, well-meaning guy, he came into my bedroom when I was in my crib trying to go to sleep, and he had a gorilla mask on, and he went over my crib, and I literally screamed for, I think my mom said it was 4 months. They had to take me to the hospital, and even sedated, I would still keep coming out of it. And ever since then, ever since I was a child, I have sleep onset insomnia, so it's hard for me to fall asleep. And then I have just a type of insomnia where it's hard for my body to go into deep sleep.
Of
because
course.
I still think there's things in the back of my head that tell me I'm not safe. So
Yeah.
I've lived with that my whole life.
Jeez.
That must be so hard. Wow.
Well, I got drugs now, so even pot's legal now.
Have you had a lot of experience going to therapy in your life?
I have in a few different ways, yeah, and it doesn't really work out well for me. The therapy that I've had, it doesn't work out for me. I'm not really looking for diagnoses.
Yeah.
And I'm actually looking for solutions to problems and not just an ongoing meandering talking, but something
Yeah.
that's actually going to resolve problems.
Yeah. So not psychotherapy and not talk therapy.
Well,
But
I've
you
done
know what?
CBD, I've done
Oh,
DVD,
okay.
I've done it. So I kind of, in some cases, what they're saying is exactly what I expect them to say. The thing, it's a thing I already
Yeah,
know.
you're ahead of them.
Yeah, and I try to explain that without being coming off as arrogant or anything like that. Just, being able to say, I've heard this before. Like, this didn't help me then, it's not going to help me now. Like,
It's
what's going
really
on?
hard because as I'm studying this stuff, and me and Adele have talked, I've had some really bad therapy, like just any
Yeah.
incidents, and they're
Yes.
all very brief, but they're all horrible.
Yeah.
But like I find the same thing, like I'm ahead, like I'm sitting there like, okay, well, like catch up. But as I'm studying psychology, I'm realizing that it's more about the trust and rapport building, and they're doing it on purpose.
And I know that.
Right. So it's hard. And it will be hard for somebody like me as well, who knows that
because you're like,
feeling
I
of
know
like,
you're
hurry up.
trying to build trust. I know you're trying to build trust with me and rapport with me. Can we skip past that part and
Yeah.
just get to the problem? And it just seems to go on forever. And I'm a big opponent of mindfulness. I just think that's the stupidest thing that the world has ever come up with. I had a therapist, one guy who was telling me about his therapist. He went there and therapist said, just stare at the flame of this candle. He goes, I'm paying
There's a lot of
$120.
quacky stuff out there. There's a lot of quacky stuff. Mindfulness, like for me, it's being in the moment and letting those stresses go somewhere else for the time being.
And I
And
agree
then
with
maybe
that
trying to
100%.
figure out what's going on and what's, what you can take forward with you into the day and what you can leave behind.
Yeah.
That's when I meditate. That's what I sort of focus on.
Yeah. And I think that's fine and healthy. It's just this stare into the candle
Staring in the
flame,
candle.
punch your pillow,
Tell me how you feel.
Yeah, all that. Take it out on the couch,
Yeah.
beat the couch up with a baseball bat or tennis racket or something. Just
I
that
do
goofy hokey stuff, right?
Yeah. And they say like too, like if you're like, even like I used to punch a punching bag all the time thinking it was helping and it only made it worse.
Right.
Like I was just like angrier.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you start hitting that bag, eh?
Yeah.
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 And yeah, so no real good things from therapy. Although I did have one good experience with a doctor in Hamilton. I would say the past couple of years, and I only saw her probably 7 times, and after that, I didn't need to see her anymore. That's how I knew she was good.
That's guidance counseling or like counseling, like.
But she's a psychiatrist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's faster and it's brief, right? It's brief therapy, and that's really to get you over a hump maybe that you're dealing with. Like,
yeah, it was when I was going through my divorce.
There you go. Yeah, that's exactly what it's used for. So like for me, it was when I was trying to figure out whether I should quit my job or not. I went to a career therapist and it was the same thing. I had 5 sessions and then she was like, I don't think you need to come back. I'm like, I really think I need to come back. She's like, no, you don't need to come back. Like, we're done here. This is the type of therapy it is. I'm like, oh, okay.
So you found an honest therapist.
Oh yeah.
I did that too.
I've seen therapists who drag people 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Well, that's psychotherapy though.
Yeah.
Right.
Never give them a solution to the problem.
Yeah. You don't want to, you want that money.
Exactly. Right. So
as I rub my chin, I'm like, how can I get into this game?
Yeah.
So Adele, have you had experience with therapy?
I've had plenty of experience with therapy. It's gotten me through some pretty traumatic times, but the most recent one that I had that was like super successful was based on grief, the grief that I was going through because I had a loss of my life due to suicide.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was having a mental breakdown. But it wasn't, my sessions had to end because the therapist was moving on to something else. But in the 5 short sessions that I had, it was amazing because she was just like real with me and honest about the grief process and not going to the books to say, this is A, B, C, D, what you go through with grief. No, grief is a mess. You're going to be a mess. expect
is.
it. And here are some tools that when you get to the point where you don't know what to do, here's what you can use to try
Yeah,
to get through that. And if that doesn't work, then try this. If that doesn't work, try this. And it was just so much more effective than being, because
yeah,
I did at the same time have like, so I was talking to someone who was like, so tell me how that made you feel. And it was just like, I can't do this anymore.
yeah. I understand that 100%. I'm sorry for that loss in your life.
Oh, thank
In the
you.
grief process, yeah, it's not the old 5 stages of grief, you
No.
know, because it's not linear.
It's
It's
not
more like
textbook, right? It's just, it's
it's
not
scrambled
textbook.
eggs.
And they're
Yeah.
I
all
mean,
different.
they're in there, but they're not linear. And some people don't
Well,
even go through some of those stages.
Sometimes you go backwards like 3 stages.
well,
Exactly.
yeah, well, and then not only that, if you haven't dealt with one grief, you're dealing with all the grief that you've ever had at one time. So
Yeah,
it's
it
not
pulls,
just,
it pulls everything.
in.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yeah.
just like, oh, I'm dealing with this loss. I'm also dealing with this one I didn't deal with, and this one I didn't deal with. So it's like, and then you've
Oh,
got
now
this
I realize what that was. Oh shit, I didn't deal with that properly. Fuck.
Right.
Why did I now I understand why I like have attachment issues with that person.
Yeah,
Yeah. It all comes up and then it just like, and then you grow, right?
and then you
then
grow. That is it. Yep.
Then you grow.
Mhm.
And that's the ultimate goal, I think.
yeah. And then you get older too.
Get
You
older
get
and
more
a little bit
mature.
wiser, or
Yeah.
a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good that, for like Adele in her situation, I'm just really happy to hear, and you as well, that it was helpful. Yeah. But it's
So
not easy.
yeah, as being a counselor isn't it exactly an easy job.
Oh no, it takes a lot out of you. A lot of emotional stress, caregiver stress. You're bombarded by problems all day long, and it can get to you. It can get to you. But
Yeah.
there's ways that counselors are taught or should be taught to relieve that from themselves. And I think obviously recognizing it is the first thing. Right?
Yeah.
For sure.
I'm not really mad at my wife. I'm just burnt out.
Mhm.
And then get your support you need in those things. So yeah, it's not an easy job.
It's hard to deal with burnout in the corporate world, though, right? Because like the policies and procedures, again, it's, you get this many sick days and you get one mental health day a year. Ta-da, we're a forward-thinking business.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
there's
I
all
always
that too.
going into a new job, I always negotiate my sick days and vacation days. They'll say, I'll give you 3 ounces. I'll take 7.
I need 15.
Yeah, I'll take 15. That'll
Right.
be good. And I'll use them on day 2.
Yeah. So you mentioned
was just
that
gonna-
your mom's a reader, and are you close with her now?
We're getting closer. Obviously she's older now, and she has medical problems that keep her kind of sedated here and there, and she's actually I gotta be careful I don't give it too many details, but she's doing really well compared to the past. Really well, a whole different person from when I was a kid, and and she's doing okay, and we're getting along okay. I'm making more of an effort to see them, and they're making more of an effort to invite me and see me, things like that. But there were times I wouldn't talk to my mother for 2 years. Yeah.
Have you ever shared any of your writing with your mother?
Oh yeah, she loves it. Yeah, she loves it. Josie and the Dragon, she didn't like 100%, but 6 Steps she loved, and then some of my other horror stories, she really likes those. And I mean, I get her to be like a beta reader, so she gives me her first impression and things like that. Because beta readers are hard to find, believe it or not. You got something and you really want just honest opinions. You don't care if they, with some beta readers, it's like, okay, your skill is kind of noticing plot or noticing characters or development or something like that. So just focus on that. Don't worry about the grammar. Don't fix my spelling mistakes. I can do that on my own. Just tell me what you like. So I'll have one guy, I'll say like, I want the flow. Tell me if it flows, it transitions well.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of writing is chunky. It's like this happens and then this
Yeah.
happens, and they're not connected at all. And you don't know how I got from here to there. And so I'll have a beta reader just kind of let me know, how's the flow of the story. I'll have another one I'll ask them, where do you think this story started? Like I'll ask them to think in their heads prior to the story to give me their ideas of when the story started. But generally it's hard with beta readers because you don't want to use your family because they love you and they won't be brutally honest with you.
Yeah.
And I have aunts that read for me and other people, but it's more for me that my mom specifically as a reader, she's kind of able to tell me if it's a good story or if it's not a good story. Not the grammar, not just whether it's a good story
just a
or
story.
not.
Yeah.
But she has this great capacity to read. She's read more books than anyone I've ever met.
I was going
And
to
I
say,
have
if she's
1,000
a
book
reader,
language. Yeah,
she can recognize a good story.
absolutely. So that's all really I want from her. And she does that. She does that for me. I just don't
nice.
always. She's kind of computer illiterate still, so
Yeah, that's hard.
To her or things like that. So I got to email it to somebody else to print out to bring over to her. She lives a few hours away from me. But yeah, she's still a reader, still one of my readers.
Nice.
Okay, so my final question is, do you have any advice for somebody who may be struggling with whether to put some intense life experiences into their writing? Like we discussed, it's a little bit of a, perhaps you have a job that they don't want to hear, that sort of thing being used, or perhaps you're protecting people in your life. But do you have any advice about how somebody might be able to go about either finding the courage to do it or how to hide it in the works?
Yeah, absolutely. And first of all, I would tell any artist to be intense. To be intense. When I write, I'm not thinking, oh, they're really going to like this, or oh, this is so clever. I'm just writing the story that's in my mind. And I use misdirection to allow my writing to be intense, but also not to be offensive to people that have their own part of that story as well. So if I have a bad parent, for example, I know that I had a bad parent. I don't necessarily know all the things that made my parent a bad parent. So they are a part of my life story, but the important part isn't really them, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
But they're a part of it. And so you can be intense and you can bring these things in, but you don't have to name names and you don't have to, unless you're doing like a biography or something, but you don't have to use people's names, and you can bring things into your story, but just try to think about how you would recall it to someone if it wasn't you. So if it wasn't me that went through that, but it was somebody else that went through that, then how do I describe their story? And I think intensity is one of the greatest aspects of art. Sometimes all manners of art can hit you in the feels. Painting can, writing can, poetry can, sculpting, you name it. That stuff hits you. And so if you have intense things in your life that you want to translate onto the page, you look at it from a different person's perspective. You don't write it as you're writing your own story. Mm-hmm. You're taking the general theme of what happened and you're writing somebody else's story along with that. Then that not only protects the people that, made mistakes, horrible mistakes that are still around and are living probably with guilt. Yeah. It's not to mash their face in it, but it also allows you to tell real, raw stories. And I think raw stories are some of the greatest stories that we have. We don't like to, we don't want to be in a war, but we love war stories because of the themes in the war story, So when you're talking about something that actually happened to you, it's kind of a healthy way to not put yourself in it totally.
Yeah.
Maybe you're talking about an incident and several things happened in that incident, but you only really want to focus on one thing instead of the other things, because that one thing goes into the story or it fits with what you're thinking or writing. and and then it's fine after that. So I would say be intense, be free. I'm sorry, I'm punching my hand here. Be intense, be free, and be brave. Be brave, because you ultimately write for yourself.
Right.
And then you want people to catch on, to get it. I know that there's some authors that just look at it as just a job and just telling good stories and things like that, and they do their form of things. And there's people who have intense experiences in their lives, and they just want to barf it onto the page.
Yeah.
But they have to be careful, because that ruins the art, right? All that is you can write down recollections and things, but it's not the same as letting your art take it.
That's very true. It's a great observation and a great tip, because I've seen people who have sort of spilt their guts, and it comes out sort of, you can hear the emotion and the chunkiness of it. Like we were talking about chunkiness earlier too. Like when you are sort of barfing on the page, like your experiences, it doesn't read well, right?
Right.
So taking a step back and putting on the author's hat and saying, do I really need to include all 5 things that happened?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because it may have been intense to you in the moment, but there probably were some things in there that people were just like, meh, whatever, it's not a big deal. But it was important to you at the moment, but it doesn't fit the story.
Yeah, it doesn't push the story forward.
Exactly. And you don't want to lose your readers or your viewers if you're any kind of other artist that does material art, like painting and such. You don't want to lose people. You want them to take it in. A great part of art is interpretation, and one thing can mean 4 things to 4 different people. And when we look at like a painting, like you look at a painting, you see an angel with an urn, I see an angel with a baby, somebody else might something else, and that's the beauty of art. We get to interpret the world and life in an artistic way. And I think that's more important than just dumping your garbage onto a page. And I mean, there are a lot of writers on the other side that just don't have a good story, but they just pump it out, right? And it takes away from the craft, and it takes away from the discipline of art, and it also drags people into places they don't want.
Like the Harlequin outlines, the Harlequin novel outlines.
Good old Fabio.
Yeah,
you gotta on those covers.
Yeah, you could basically plug in their formula,
Anything.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. There are a lot of formulaic styles of writing, and one of the things I love about the Canadian Authors Association is they will very quickly let you know if you're just A plus B equals C, A plus B. Like
there you go again.
Yeah, it's like come on, it's repetitive, or this doesn't matter, that doesn't matter, those kinds of things. So that group has been a wonderful part of my life and my writing journey. And I love editing, so I do a lot of editing for them as well. I'm a little too nitpicky for some of them, but
well, I might join at some point if I ever find enough time to get back.
It's a once a month meeting on a Sunday afternoon.
I've got, my schedule is so jam-packed right now, but like I did read you a little excerpt from something that I did, but it was just the beginning, so it did relit a fire.
Yes.
But yeah, I want to actually be in a point in my time in my life where this is my hobby focus.
Yes.
Right. And I don't have that time right now, but I don't want to.
Good.
Yeah. I don't want to like just try to fit it in now just because it's something else I want to do. I want to concentrate on it.
Yeah. Well, you as a writer, you also need to have freedom. Just to have the freedom to express yourself and to take a story like you've started and finish it. It's like finishing a painting, I imagine, for you. I mean, I couldn't paint a stick man, but your painting is marvelous, and there must be a sense of accomplishment after you've done that final stroke of the brush.
No, it's really like this. It's like I think it was Da Vinci that said art is never finished, it's only abandoned. That's what it's really like. for me.
Yeah.
I don't have a formula that I use. Like Adele
No.
is a micro butterfly artist.
Yeah.
So she has a picture, she gets as close to it as possible.
It's
And then
amazing.
it tells her when it's done. And it's pretty close to the picture. Me, I don't have pictures.
Yeah.
So it's either like a dream I've had or a vision I've had or something pretty that triggered an idea.
Just raw talent, just your art, your creative mind at work.
Exactly. So I don't really know when something's done, but I know when I've gone too far.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And having writers or artists critique your art, and especially, I don't want to say especially writing just because I'm a writer, but for me, for writing, it's really good to conclude something in a way that is satisfying. Like, I've seen stories that are so open-ended, they're worse than TV programs, and stories that just the end comes and you're like, whoa, what was that? What happened there? Like, it's not complete. It just leaves you feeling unsatisfied.
And I think that's the perfect ending for a podcast.
There you go.
Really enjoyed speaking with you and hearing your story, and you have a lot of really great information to share.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to know more about the Creative Conversations Pen Pals project and how to become part of some of the programming that I offer through BWMZ Art Loft, you can find out more on my website, bwmzartloft.ca. The link is in the description. You can also find some of my artwork on there. If you'd like to know more about Adele Campbell and see some of her artwork, you can visit her website at hadelecampbell.com. Again, the link to that will be in the description. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about some art retreats, that art and wellness retreats that me and Adele are doing together in September and October, please do reach out at artbyrhiannandbarry@gmail.com. And if you'd like to know more about Brent, you can reach him through his email address, also in the description. I leave you now with Brent Thomas reading his short story called Napping that was written in 2018.
I come home from work tired. It's so hard to believe that it's not even Friday. As is my habit, I flop onto the queen-size mattress in my room. I usually lay diagonally, but my wife has had the day off and is already asleep, so I'm forced to go vertical. She stirs and asks me if I'm home early. I'm tempted to answer sarcastically, but I think better of it. Yes, I reply, tired and not wanting to talk. I saw the new dishwasher. Guilt compels me not to be rude and to extend this conversation that I don't want to have. Yes, she throws back, possibly irritated by my annoyance. Did the dishes come clean, I offer? Sparkling. We got an email from the broker. I'll forward it to you, she says. I hear the swoosh of an email. My phone vibrates. I ignore it. What's the bottom line? What's the interest rate? The mundane conversation helps add weight to my already drooping eyelids. I haven't got that far yet, she says, and now she's distracted, and I can hear her gently reading under her breath. It's a habit that she doesn't know that she has and that I don't bother to mention. She has other habits that are worse, like her finger licking. Is there anything more disgusting than a finger licker? She could star in a million fried chicken commercials. She wouldn't need any lines. Heck, she wouldn't even need the chicken. Just give her a few $5 bills, a couple of sheets of paper, or anything that could be separated by fingertips, and compulsively, inevitably, her digits will head towards her mouth for a little moisturizing. Taking the girls with me when I go get my hair done, she says. I realize she's still talking while I've been actively non-listening. My eyes grow heavier, and when she trails off, I start to come back to the surface, which is the last place that I want to be. Keep talking, I slur, half awake, eyes closed. I feel movement on the bed beside me and realize she's getting up. No, keep talking. I'm not going to talk you to sleep. I have more important things to do. She's not bitter. just waking up herself and getting ready for the everything else that she must do as the mother of four that she is. It's just after 3, the kids will be home soon. But it's soothing, I whine. It doesn't work, and my wife pulls the door shut on her way out. It's okay. I can feel myself losing weight, beginning to drop into the great nothing. An afternoon nap is a tranquil and seductive waste of time. I don't think that I fall asleep deeply enough to be rested when I coax my eyes back open. That doesn't matter. When you're dog tired, all you want to do is sleep. Eventually, the body gets what it wants, and you don't get a say in the matter. Your consciousness becomes second fiddle to your exhaustion. I can feel myself falling asleep. It's like dropping in slow motion. I know this sensation as only one who has fallen from a height can, and I have fallen on a few occasions. My mind drifts to the 5th grade when I had determined to climb trees. I don't know that there was any reason except that I wanted to see if I could do it. On the far side of our neighbor's house, there was a small brick school named Calvin Christian. It was a school for a select community, and though we grew up beside it, we never met any of the children who went there or even saw much of them. My 2 younger brothers and I spent many summer days on the baseball diamond at school, smashing and chasing balls. At the back of our home and behind the school, there was farmland as far as the eye could see, flat, muddy, and utterly unimpressive. The only break in the mud was a thin green space between the back of the school and acres of flat ground. That green space was just a thin line of trees, weeds, and vines. It was probably not much more than 10 meters wide, but it was dense with foliage. In this hazy slumber, I found myself back in time amidst a thin strand of pines when the idea of climbing trees came to fruition. Why do boys and girls climb trees? What is that relationship between the children in the trunk that rises to the heavens? One seems to call to the other. The tree invites you. It tempts and challenges you. Perhaps it is a rite of passage or a primordial challenge, but it almost seems to me that children, perhaps specifically boys, are simply meant to climb trees. If there is a tree that begs for climbing, it is the pine. The pine is not more than a trunk with a built-in ladder system. Though the outside is thick with bristles, the space nearer the trunk that receives little to no light is a mass of bare branches and twigs that do not grow as fast as their brothers and become condemned to stiltedness. Beginning the climb was exactly like mounting a ladder, a very simple matter of hand and foot placement with a pull here and a push there. Some branches are thick and some more twiggy, so you must maneuver, your weight breaking off some of the holds as you go. To properly climb a pine, you must ascend in a spiral. The tree wants climbing, of this I was sure. The mark of this truth is the pine sap. The sap of the pine is glue. That sap quickly covers the palms and fingers of your hands as you climb, giving you that sense of being like Spider-Man, my childhood hero. This only confirmed the belief that I was somehow meant to climb trees. I can remember spiraling up that tree. The scent of pine settled into my nostrils. Sap and needles were stuck in my hair, on my face, and covered my hands. I didn't climb so much as I scurried up the tree, rising with fluid grace. It was so easy, so natural, and so right that I became lost in the climb and was surprised and jubilant to realize that I had reached the top. The view from that top amazed me. An ear-to-ear smile spread across my face as I took in, for the first time, what was my entire world. I remember looking towards my house and thinking how small it seemed. It wasn't that I was at some great height. It was just that I had never considered how small an entire house is when viewed in the scope of all that can be. I gathered some comfort then that although things seem very big when you are in them, they are small when you look at all that surrounds. From here, I felt that even the horrific things that happened to me in that house were small when compared to the vastness of a life that could breathe in the expanse of an entire world. I drew strength from that enough strength to endure the abuse that I knew was to come in that small house. I don't know how tall that tree was, but I did learn that the higher you go, the greater the wind. Reality overcame my euphoria, and I suddenly noticed that I was clutched tightly to the top of an increasingly swaying tree. I felt an undeniable, sudden certainty that treetops were not meant to hold little boys. Fear began to set in. The tree did not want me on it. The momentum of the swaying treetop increased to the point that I was sure it would eject me through the air at any moment. I discovered that afternoon that climbing down a tree is not as euphoric as climbing up, nor as easy. I began my slow descent, trying to remember which direction I had spiraled up in so that I could reverse the path, or the tried and true path. However, moving in reverse, even in a straight line, is never as simple as it appears or as you think it ought to be. I had not gone more than a few rather precarious branches down when I realized that I needed to take a serious look at my route. The pine sap seemed to be working against me, so I stood with 2 feet on a branch and tried to wipe my hands clean on my pants. That was when I heard the crack. For some reason, childhood disbelief in tragedy perhaps, instead of grabbing the trunk, I chose to look down at the branch beneath my feet. There was a split second of clarity. I realized that the branch was tumbling away from me and that I was not standing upon it any longer. The world turned upside down, and I felt as if I was going away from something rather than of hurtling towards something. It was as if I had left something up at the top of that tree and I was swiftly losing touch with it. Years later, I attended a lecture at which the speaker professed that a human being is programmed to fear only 3 things from a biological standpoint: loud noises, something coming at us from behind, and falling. It occurred to me during that lecture and in reflection that I was not afraid as I fell. It was rather like a sense of profound loss. I learned that if you're going to fall out of a tree, there isn't a better tree to fall out of than a pine. As I fell, I tried to reach out and grab anything I could get a grip on, but it wasn't possible. Instead of finding purchase or hold of anything, my neck, head, back, arms, and legs hit every branch and twig attached to that contrary tree. The breath blew out of me, my arms and legs ached, but at the end of a few seconds, the boughs had slowed me sufficiently enough that I landed in a bed of dead pine needles at the base of that tree with a gentle whomp. It took a fully panicked minute to catch my breath. I greedily sucked in great gulps of air as if the world was running out of it. I settled into my natural rhythm of inhaling and exhaling, and then I just lie there for a while looking back up into that tree, trying to work out exactly what it was that I had left up there, what exactly I had lost. I tried my arms and legs, cautiously probing to gouge my pain. Every part of me was sore but working, and even the pain started to lessen. Despite my feeling of forfeiture, the realization that I had survived overwhelmed me, and I began to laugh. The laughter pealed out of me uncontrollably till I was laughing so hard that tears ran down my face and my chest heaved in great draughts of air. I had climbed it, I had fallen, but I had survived. Once again I was falling, this time not from a tree. Now I was falling some intangible and immeasurable distance within myself. The world was quieting, and I could feel my body on the outside, comfortable and still, while I felt consciousness inside my body falling slowly away. The distance increases until awareness no longer exists, and I was napping. The end.